The iPhone 15 is in serious trouble. It might be severely delayed, if not canceled altogether. Our favorite Cupertino billionaire might seem cool, calm, and collected on the outside, but behind closed doors, Tim is freaking out.
This is bullshit.
But honestly, why does this matter? Why does Apple have to release a new iPhone every single year? Why not just take a year off and make a better phone? The answer is simple and mostly has to do with Android. Let me tell you why the iPhone 15 is so in trouble, what Apple's plan is to sort of hopefully keep things on track, and why Android is making the iPhone worse every single year. And Tim is not happy. In just a matter of weeks from now, on a nice, crisp, warm September morning, Tim Cook is gonna walk across the stage in Cupertino, give his iconic
Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
and finally show off the iPhone 15 line to the world for the very first time. Honestly, events like this have become super predictable these days. They're almost like sort of just meme-worthy at this point. There are plenty of Apple event spoof videos on YouTube and really funny Tim Cook impersonators on TikTok.
Good morning to everybody except for Mark Zuckerberg.
It's sort of like everyone knows what Apple's going to announce before they even announce it, but this year is gonna be different. Maybe not in a good way. That's because multiple reports have come out over the last couple of days from multiple sources saying that Apple is having some serious issues building the iPhone 15 this year. And as of right now, it looks like the iPhone 15 could launch on time, but it's gonna be really hard to get one of these new models, or the phone is gonna be severely delayed by at least a couple of weeks or maybe even a couple of months. And Apple does have an emergency plan in place for moments just like this, and I'll tell you what their secret plan is. But first, sort of comes the obvious question, why? Why is there pressure for Apple to release a new iPhone every single year? Why not just build a really good phone and release it when it's ready? Most people don't even upgrade every year, so why would there need to be this constant churn of new phones every 12 months? Well, like I mentioned a moment ago, really comes down to two main reasons, with the first one probably being the most obvious, and that is money. Sweet, sweet money that Apple loves. I showed this graphic in a previous video, but I'm gonna show it again here just so you can see what I'm saying, and that is that just by glancing at this, you can obviously see that the iPhone is Apple's biggest moneymaker. Now, you may not upgrade your phone every single year, but many people, like myself, guilty as charged, do upgrade every single year. And also, even if it's not your year to upgrade, if you're waiting 2, 3, 4 years, someone has waited that long and they are looking to get an upgrade, so there always is a customer looking to buy a brand new iPhone, whether that's a regular sort of iPhone user who's casual and wants a new phone for a better camera, or maybe like me, someone who's just obsessed and gives way too much of their disposable income to Apple. And because the iPhone makes up such a significant portion of Apple's revenue, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars a year, Apple is forced to, at the very least, preserve the iPhone to make sure it doesn't lose any traction, if not really grow it every single year. That means in order to make new Apple Watches and new AirPods and new Macs and mixed reality headsets, Apple has to make sure the iPhone is successful because that is their moneymaker. That is the thing that funds all of their other endeavors. If you want to have a good Mac and you want to enjoy AirPods, the iPhone's gotta still go on sale and hit its deadline. And Apple realizes that their dependency on the iPhone is kind of a pretty big problem. That's why they're trying to push services so hard like iCloud Plus and Apple TV Plus and Apple Arcade. They're doing a good job of growing their services division, and they're trying to do that to sort of lessen their dependency on the iPhone. So that sort of creates this never-ending cycle. Because the iPhone is so important to Apple, they've got to, grow it and make it better than ever, which means they've got to sort of refresh it every single year, which leads to tight deadlines and sort of having to make sacrifices on things and new features, which means that Apple, no matter what, needs to release an iPhone every single year. And there's a strong case to be made that the iPhone is worse because of this pressure. Because Apple needs to make so much money from this, they're making sacrifices on design changes or new features or sort of better things that we would like on the iPhone because they simply don't have time for it. They've got to stick to a very stringent schedule, and in order to get the iPhone out the door, they've got to cut some things to make that possible. And there is a very real possibility that if Apple wasn't on this timetable, if they could sort of release a new iPhone when they wanted to, when it was ready, maybe every 16, 18 months, maybe even every other year, sure that we could have a better phone every year because of it. If you wanted more significant design changes and camera improvements and just bigger generation to generation upgrades, the only way that would be possible would be if Apple could sort of change the timetable of things. The second reason Apple is sort of putting out iPhones every single year on such a stringent schedule is because of our friends on the green side of the aisle with their Android phones. Because, like it or not, the Android competition is fiercer than it's ever been before. And when you have companies like Samsung doing crazy thing with their cameras, or Nothing phones really breaking into the market with some cool new designs, or Google trying to get into the Pixel Fold game and get into folding phones, you have so many different form factors and features and price points that Apple has to remain competitive, or they're going to lose their market share and a lot of money to people buying Android phones. So because of that, in order to stay competitive and to sort of fend off their territory and fight the competition, they've got to keep churning out iPhones every single year. Even if other companies have different release schedules, that doesn't matter because there are always new Android phones popping up all the time. Apple is the only maker of the iPhone, for better or worse, so they've got to keep that schedule running and keep those phones coming out, on there's my wrist, my watch, on a timely manner. And this is not to say that Android is the root of all the iPhone's, problems. In fact, actually, Android has made the iPhone better. It's definitely forced Apple to remain competitive with their cameras, with their designs, even with their ports lately. It's really causing them to do things they wouldn't normally do. Yes, sometimes that might mean sort of sacrificing things to get the iPhone out the door, but also it sort of keeps Apple accountable, it keeps them competitive, and I believe Android as a whole has forced Apple to make positive changes to the iPhone that we might not have gotten, at the same time, if Apple was sort of left to their own devices and did whatever they wanted to do when they wanted to do it. Because Apple, despite what they may think, doesn't always know best. But it's clear that as of right now, for better or worse, the show must go on and the iPhone 15 must go on and sort of be released during this September timeframe. And that sort of leads to the question as to, well, what's happening now? We know the iPhone 15 is going to have new features, 15, 15 Plus, 15 Pro, 15 Pro Max. We know all the phones, we know the features, but when is it actually coming? What's Apple going to do if there's big problems? In all likelihood, as of now, it seems like Apple is going to hold their virtual event as they normally would, probably in early September, and then the phone launches will either go a couple of different ways. One is that all the phones could release as normal and no one knows there was ever a hiccup behind the scenes. There could also be a very real possibility that the 15 line releases, but the 15 Pros are in short supply and they're just harder to get. That seems to always be the case every single year. The 15 Pros are hard to find. That might be the case for the first couple of weeks. Or what Apple may do, which is something they have done 2 other times in the past, is do a staggered launch where they would launch their sort of non-Pro phones, maybe the 15 and 15 Plus first, and the 15 Pros would come a couple of weeks later. Maybe it's end of September, maybe it's early October. So I am curious to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Apple's dependency on the iPhone 15? What are your thoughts on the potential delays? Do you think this is a big deal? Is it being blown out of proportion? And also, what are your thoughts on this constant pressure for Apple to keep making new phones every single year? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Should Apple take their time? Is Android influencing the iPhone in the right way? Let me know your thoughts to this down below. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much for your support. I'm Robert Rosenfeld from the Apple Circle, and I'll see you all in the next one.